Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to start lecture number 3, which is about reproduction in plants. So students, reproduction is a process by which living beings or the organisms propagate or duplicate, and is the process of production of new individuals or offsprings which can be accomplished by either sexually or asexually. Okay students, why reproduction is important? Why do plants need to reproduce? Why do plants need to propagate? Okay, reproduction is essential because it is important for all the species to survive. Okay, so all species need to survive. If they need to survive, they must reproduce successfully in every generation. Okay, some organisms reproduce individually. Their offsprings are genetically identical to the parent, like it happens in asexual reproduction. Other reproduce sexually, where the fusion of gametes occurs. They produce offsprings that receive genetic information from both the parents. Okay, thus it brings genetic variation in the individuals. Okay, and the individuals, unlike in asexual reproduction, they are not exactly identical to their parents. Okay? There are two major types of reproduction in organisms, like asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Okay? Asexual reproduction in plants is also termed as vegetative reproduction. So let's first discuss asexual reproduction. It is a type of reproduction in which specialized cells or asexual units are produced by the parent body, which grow themselves into new individuals. Therefore, development of new individual without fusion of male and female gametes is known as asexual reproduction. Okay, so what is an asexual reproduction? In which no fusion of gametes is involved. Okay, and the examples of asexual production in organisms are binary fission, fragmentation, spore formation, and budding. Asexual reproduction is considered as natural cloning, since no fusion of gametes is involved in case of asexual reproduction. Parts of the plant, such as leaves or stems, they produce roots and become an independent plant. Okay. So, why this is known as natural cloning? Because it is an asexual reproduction is occurring through the somatic cells. Okay, like somatic cells, like parts of the in case of plants, stem, leaves, or certain specialized parts of the plants can be developed into an independent plant without fusion of gametes. A group of genetically identical cells or organisms produced through asexual reproduction can be called as clone. Since it is developing as a result of asexual reproduction and it lacks genetic variation, therefore it is not as strong as the individuals that arise as the result of sexual reproduction, where fusion of male and female gametes is involved. They are genetically more diverse, they are genetically more um, uh, diversified, thus more stronger. Okay, so they can bear the harsh environment, but clone is uh, prone to the environmental or the biotic stresses. Okay. As far as the types of asexual reproduction are concerned, these are binary fission, budding, fragmentation, and sporulation. Okay, binary fission is the type of asexual reproduction in which a cell simply divides into two. and the division of nuclear material in cytoplasm uh, occurs equally in both the cells. Okay, and it is carried out by paramecium, amoeba, bacteria, and many algae. Like these are the organisms that undergo binary fission. Okay, well, budding is just like the binary fission, but in case of budding, no equal division of cytoplasm occurs because bud can be even smaller than the parent cell. Okay, so budding can be done in unicellular organisms as well as in multicellular organisms. Okay, in unicellular organisms, this is similar to binary fission, but has an unequal division of cytoplasm as we just discussed. So offspring is smaller than the parent. Okay, like what happens during budding? A small bud appears on the parent cell, then it ultimately is detached from the parent cell and has the ability to develop into an independent individual, and since the small size of the bud or the individual is smaller than the parent, there is no equal division of cytoplasm in this case. Okay, in multicellular organisms, a bunch of cells may be formed on a smaller organism on the original. If conditions are favorable, the bud develops into a fully functional organism which may or may not detached from the parent. Correlation mostly occurs in molds and mushrooms, and spores are single specialized cells that are released from the parent and can be developed into new individuals if the conditions are favorable. Okay, so these are the different types of asexual reproduction. The main objectives of this lecture are defining asexual or the vegetative reproduction in plants, then listing the specialized plant structures that are involved in vegetative propagation of the plants and describing their general morphology with examples. Okay, then we will be talking of the difference between natural and artificial ways of vegetative propagation. Then we will also be discussing the difference between cuttings, layering, goatee, and grafting, like all the different types of vegetative propagations that do occur in plants. Okay, and we will also discuss their examples. Finally, we will be defining micropropagation, like what is micropropagation and what are the different methods that are employed in it. And then we will be talking of the advantages of micro propagation, and at the end of this topic we will be describing the advantages of vegetative propagation. Advantages as well as the disadvantages of the micro propagation will also be discussed in this lecture. So let's discuss asexual reproduction or vegetative propagation in plants. What happens during or after asexual reproduction occurs in plants? Part of the plant becomes separated from the parent plant and divides by mitosis to grow into a new plant. Okay? As a result, the offspring are genetically identical to the parents. Okay? So in plant cells, a cell plate, as you can see in the figure, okay, is formed after mitosis between each new cell like a cell wall, and then the two cells are, or the two individuals or plant cells are separated. Okay, and the cytoplasm and every thing, the nuclear materials is equally divided between the two cells. Okay, these two cells as a result of asexual reproduction are the exact copy of their parents. Okay. Alright students, let's discuss how does vegetative or asexual reproduction occurs in lower plants. Okay, so vegetative reproduction is the production of new plants from any vegetative part of the plant except the seed. Okay, reproduction takes place through vegetative parts such as bulbils, corms, rhizome, bulbs, stem cuttings, and root cuttings. Okay, vegetative reproduction in certain filamentous algae like Spirogyra occurs if the filament gets broken into two or more portions, okay, that each portion is capable of growing into an independent individual by cell divisions. Okay, So this reproduction in Spirogyra is known as vegetative reproduction or asexual reproduction because no fusion of male and female gametes is involved in this case. Now, if we talk about vegetative reproduction in higher plants, most of the plants which reproduce vegetatively in nature, they usually have small daughter plants that grow around them. As in case of banana, these plants have aerial portions with green leaves, and they also have a thickened modified stem that is known as rhizome that grows horizontally under the soil. Okay. From this underground stem, new young plants grow out like the babies of the mother plants. Okay. And these young plants develop their own root system. And when separated from the mother plant, they can grow independently. Okay. So vegetative parts of the plants which reproduce, they do have primary or secondary meristems and are capable of active cell division so that they can give rise to new plants. Okay. That's how vegetative reproduction occurs in higher plants. Okay, so now let's discuss the specialized plant parts or the structures that are involved in the vegetative reproduction in plants. Okay. Okay, let's discuss the vegetative parts of the plants that are involved in the vegetative propagation of the plants, and these are cuttings, bulbs, tubers, combs, etc. Okay, so let's discuss all these plant parts one by one. Cuttings or cutting is any piece of the plant that grows from the parent plant, and it has the ability to develop into new individual. Okay, geranium and coleus, they uh, vegetatively propagate through cuttings. Now, if we talk about the bulbs, bulbs are the parts of the plants that bud from the parent plants, and each bud has the ability to grow into a new individual. Onions and tulips, they vegetatively propagate through bulbs. Then tubers are the stem-like structures that grow underground from the parent. They can form new individual organisms if the conditions are favorable. And the examples of the plants that vegetatively propagate through tubers are potatoes. Then runners are stem-like structures that grow above the soil from the parent, and when conditions are favorable like enough light and moisture, they can grow into a new individual. Strawberries vegetatively propagate through runners. Okay. Then there is another type of stem-like structure that is known as sucker. Okay, the major difference between runners and suckers is that suckers have certain attachment points, and whenever that point touches the ground, it can be developed into a new individual after the establishment of the adventitious roots. Okay, then plants do propagate through grafting, and in grafting, specialized tissue called cambiums, they can be attached to a cutting of a parent plants. And the main difference between grafting and cutting is that any piece of the plant, in case of cutting, any piece of the plant uh, has the ability to develop into a new individual, while in without any involvement of the cambium or the meristematic tissues. But in case of grafting, the grafts, the sign, rooted stalk, and the stalk. Okay, the sign and the stalk, they must be combined through their cambium or through their meristematic tissues to develop a new individual. Okay, whenever there is a and their vascular bundles, they do have they must have continuity. Okay, when they are combined, they develop the adventitious roots some a few days after this process is done, and they can be developed into a new individuals. For seedless oranges propagate through grafting, or they can be produced through the process of grafting. We can artificially grow plants with different characteristics that are desirable through this process. Okay. Vegetative reproduction in plants can be done through various plant parts, like it can be done by stem, by roots, by leaves, and even by bulbs. Okay. In case of vegetative reproduction by stem, vegetative propagation, a few examples with the technical names of such stems are as follows. Okay. So these are the types of stems through which plants can vegetatively propagate, like runners, lawn grasses. They propagate through the runners, and then mint propagates through suckers, ginger they propagate through rhizome. All these are the types of the stems. Potato propagates through tuber, arvi propagates through corms, and onion propagates through bulbs. Okay, so all these are the various types of the stem that are involved in the vegetative propagation of the plants. Then vegetative propagation can also be done through the leaf. Leaves of a number of plants produce adventitious buds in their marginal notches. Okay, these buds usually remain dormant or inactive in intact plants, but when these leaves are detached or touch the soil with proper moisture, dormancy of the buds ends and each notch is able to produce a small new plant. Okay, vegetative propagation by fleshy leaves of different kinds of rose are also very common. When leaves get detached from the main plant and moisture is available or like conditions are favorable, the leaf base produces a new plant. That's how plants can vegetatively propagate through the leaves. Along with the stem and leaves, plants can also vegetatively propagate through bulbils. These bulbils are sometimes these are like small tufts, like in case of pineapple. In some plants, such as pineapple, some of the upper and lower flowers of the inflorescence, instead of producing fruit and seeds, they become modified into small tufts. Those tufts are called bulbils. When these bulbils fall on the ground, they can be developed into a new individual plant. Okay. Okay, the topic is still continued, but we will discuss the remaining lecture in our next class, that will be on Monday at 12 o'clock. Now, if up till this, if you have any question or query, you can ask during interactive session that will be done on Wednesday at 12, Thursday at 12 o'clock.